Good afternoon, everyone. If you're watching right now, we're going to begin in just 3 minutes, waiting for everybody to come in. There's only one person. Is that Miss Barb? Okay. All right. The time is now 11:30, and I only see one person announce themselves in the chat. Um, it's 9999. Uh, yeah, we only got one person here. And I don't even think she's here. If she's not here, then we should. It's just you. Okay, well, let's not do this then. If there's only, what's that? 3 people, but the participants show maybe they're not signed in. Okay, well I'm gonna begin. Anyways, we'll hopefully they figure that out. I'm just gonna begin now. Anyways, and then you can come back and watch what you missed at the introduction. It's really a lot of fluff at the beginning. So thank you if you are watching this. If you are watching it in the future because you are not here live. Welcome to the AirWatch webinar. I'm just going to go over how to use AirWatch and manage it in your classroom environment. Ideally, I'd like you to introduce yourself in the chat, but I'm not sure who out there is watching or if they're signed in with their YouTube account. They may not be able to access the chat feature, which is totally fine. For now, in the meantime, I'll just keep going with the presentation, and then we'll see if somebody comes in. So we can wait. Okay. I'm also setting up. Okay. All right. Well, I guess yeah. I'll wait 5 minutes. We'll take it to 11:35, and then I'll begin. And I'm gonna try to. Generally speaking, this webinar actually has a tendency of going a little bit longer than the hour that we say so. So I'm gonna try to avoid a lot of the stuff that is redundant. So usually we cover like how to enroll the devices into AirWatch. But I'm hoping that you guys already know that, and if you don't, then what we'll do is we'll just wait till the end of the webinar, and then if people are sticking around and want to see that, then I can definitely do that as well. So I'll just begin at 11:35. We'll postpone it by 5 minutes, and then I'm going to try to go through this quickly because I don't want to waste your guys' time, and I want you guys to get the most out of this and what you need to do to use it in your school. So. Okie dokie, 11:35. Let's begin. Thank you and welcome. We're going to be covering AirWatch today. If you haven't already done so and you're here now and I don't see you in the chat, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. If you're not signed in with a YouTube account, you may need to do that in order to use the chat feature. So just say hi. It helps us with attendance for the Key to Learn course, and as well as we'll know whether you are watching it. That's perfect. Thank you, Antoinetta. So let's kick this off. Before we begin, I just want to let you know this webinar is recorded, so the same YouTube link that you're watching on right now will be the YouTube link that you can go back to and watch it. So everything that I'm saying and doing right now is being recorded, and you can go back and watch it again. You can also check out the channel that you're watching right from here on and see previous webinars. And if you want to skip through it, like a lot of people, they use this webinar as like a reference point. They'll actually go back, watch the webinar they watch. Obviously, you don't have to watch, the whole however long it takes, but you can just skip to the points in the video that you may need a refresher on, just to see like a live demo of the stuff. Also, there's a 10-second delay between the moment I'm saying something and the moment you hear it. So if you're asking a question in the chat and you're like, oh, why isn't he answering it? It's probably just because it's that 10-second delay. I will try to answer all the questions in the chat as they come up. If they require a little bit more detail, though, I'll take that question and probably park it to the end. And if you cannot stay till the end and you're like, hey, but I had that question, you'll have to come back and watch the video because I will cover that question for you. Just I may have to put it at the end if it requires a little bit more detail. And before we begin, also, you can adjust the quality settings in YouTube. I'm pretty sure I don't need to explain this. By default, you can change the quality. It'll be set to auto. You might want to leave it on auto because it'll best detect, the quality per speed. But if you find that it's not clear what you're seeing on the screen, adjust it to 1080p or 720p. Also, if you look down at the bottom of the YouTube video, there is a live button next to the volume control. If that button is not red, it means that it has kind of fallen out of sync. So you may be like 5 minutes or behind. So if you're wondering, why there's a big delay, that might be why. So just make sure that live button shows red. And if it doesn't, you just click the actual wording that says live, and it will take you to the quote-unquote livest version possible. So AirWatch, what is it? Well, AirWatch is our mobile device management system / enterprise mobility management system, which is basically a fancy term for a centralized point where all our devices communicate with and get their policies and configurations. And in our case, what we're going to be doing is deploying apps to them. So all of our iPads are talking to the big brain that is AirWatch that's sitting on the internet, and they will get all their details from AirWatch. There are some benefits to AirWatch. So it'll automatically connect to the WLAN TDSB01 wireless network. So you don't have to enter in an employee number and password or a student number and password to join TDSB-Wi-Fi, for example. So they're on our production network, and then they'll be able to use even like the mobile printing features as well as being part of on our production network. You can install multiple apps for multiple iPads in a few clicks, so rather than going up to each individual iPad and signing in with the Apple ID, going into the Apple Store and finding the app that you want and clicking download on like 100 iPads, you can just take an app that you want and deploy it to all 100 iPads in a few clicks from this one portal. Also, there's a consistent experience between the iPads. So I have with me here an iPad just to show you that the iPads now all should have the TDSB 20th anniversary logo in the background, and they will have the blue background, so that they all kind of look the same as far as like a standardized look and feel goes. Also, oops, sorry, it's falling out of sync. There we go. There are built-in security policies preventing students from locking and adding or removing apps. This is an important one. So before AirWatch, what used to happen is we had a lot of students that would put a passcode on the device, like one that you have to like type in a PIN code before you unlock the device, and they wouldn't tell the teacher what that was, and you effectively had to wipe the device. So there's basically two modes that I'm going to show you about using the iPad. We'll call it student mode and teacher mode, right? The student mode will be locked down to prevent students from adding apps and putting those passcodes on the device, and then if you can switch to teacher mode, you're full permission to do whatever you want to the iPad. And the last benefit, I'd say, is a school-level inventory of all your iPads. So you have a centralized place where you can see all the details of your iPad. What make are they? What model are they? When were they last online? It gives you a lot of details about your iPad, and you'll have it in this one web portal. And you can even export that information into like an Excel spreadsheet if you are so inclined. It gives you an inventory of your school's iPads. Oops, there we go. Okay, so who can log in? So ideally, you guys can log in. We usually check to see if you guys are able to log in before you guys attend this webinar. There was, last I checked, only one person that we weren't sure of whether they had access, and they may have access now because we may have granted them that. But by default, all principals can log into AirWatch, and AirWatch administrators, which should be you. So your principal can make an AirWatch administrator at school, volunteering or voluntolding somebody to manage AirWatch, and basically they add you into the EMM group in LAS. So LAS is that web portal where you can reset student passwords and add supply teachers to your school group. So in LAS they can also assign a teacher at the school the ability to manage AirWatch, and it takes about 12 to 24 hours once you're added in before you can actually log into the AirWatch web console. So this demo is going to cover the iPad new look and feel. You briefly saw it. We're going to see how to navigate the AirWatch web console. We're going to organize our iPads into what the product calls smart groups. Basically group them by purpose, and then you can deploy apps more intelligently. And then we're going to add and remove the apps and web clips from the iPads. So first things first, I like to cover the device side of things. And just so you can see particularly that feature that I was talking about, the student mode and teacher mode. I think that's the most important as far as covering the device side of things. So actually, sorry, let me jump back here. The reason I have these two icons up here, the agent and the catalog, is because those are like the two things that are an immediate indicator that your iPad is in AirWatch. The agent app is the brains of AirWatch. It's what allows that iPad to communicate with the AirWatch system. And the catalog is... I don't want to tell you what the catalog is just yet because I'll explain it later. But basically, the catalog is like a portfolio of different apps you can add to the iPad. So I'm going to toggle over to the iPad, and as you can see, it's regarding the same look and feel that I was referring to. If I bring it to the lock screen here, it has the TDSB 20th anniversary logo, the date and time, and also one other new thing is at the bottom of the iPad in very small writing. I don't know if that'll focus, but right where it says press home to open. Oh, oops. Let's see if I can get that to focus. It has the iPad name as it appears in AirWatch. Oh, that's not going to focus. And in very small writing, also the serial number. Yeah, you probably can't see that. But it is helpful if you pick up an iPad and you're calling us and you're like, hey, my iPad doesn't do whatever. Let's say it doesn't join the wireless. Usually we ask you for the serial number, and the reason for that is so that we can uniquely identify the device. So the serial number is right there at the bottom of the screen. I don't know if you can see my finger, but you can read out the serial number from there. Once I press the home screen, I'm just going to turn off because the screen keeps timing out really fast. Let me just change that. Auto lock never. Let me turn up the brightness a bit. Okay. So once we're past the lock screen, again, it has that blue background, and this iPad already has a bunch of apps on it. But one thing I want to make clear is that you'll see that there is no App Store here. So if this is the first time I'm seeing an AirWatch iPad and I'm looking at this, I might wonder how is it that I get apps on here if I don't have the App Store. That's where I go to get my apps. Obviously, AirWatch is the brains that's going to be handling this, and AirWatch will be deploying the apps to the iPad. So right now, there is no App Store. And another thing is that if we go into settings, a lot of the settings are actually missing. You cannot, for example, sign in with an Apple ID, which you would usually do right here. Sign into an iCloud account. You cannot sign in with the iTunes and Apple ID down here either. You can't change the background. A whole whack ton of restrictions. And I think the most important is that you also can't put a passcode on the device, which is what the students were doing that was causing a little bit of a problem. So this iPad is essentially locked down, and the idea here is that we don't want students to go into the App Store and download games or make purchases on an Apple ID. We don't want them to sign in with an iCloud account and then basically that iPad is now belong to them. And as well, we don't want them to put a passcode on the device. So right now this iPad is in what we'll call student mode. And I guess one other thing I actually show you about student mode also is that if I go to remove an app, and how you would remove an app is you tap and hold until they all start wiggling. You'll notice they're all wiggling, but there's no X. So usually if you want to remove an app, there's like an X in the top right-hand corner that you could remove. So I've now pushed these apps to this iPad, and I'm not giving the person who uses it the ability to remove the apps. So we're trying to make it tamper-proof. So that's all fine and dandy if you're a student, you're looking at this, you're pretty locked down, you can't really, do too much to this iPad as far as wrecking it, removing apps or changing the name or what have you. But let's say now you're a teacher and you want to put an app on it and you don't want to use AirWatch for whatever reason. Let's say you want to use the App Store. We can actually switch this iPad into an unlocked state such that it's like, we'll call it teacher mode, right? And how we do that is we use that AirWatch Agent app up here. So this Agent app that I showed you, let me just bring it down here. This blue shield. That is the brains of AirWatch, and if we launch the blue shield, what will happen is it'll bring us to a page that'll ask us to sign in with our username and password, which obviously here we're going to use our employee number and password. Once we use our employee number and password, here we go. What it's going to do is it's going to, let me just actually pull this off the screen. I don't want to show you my password because it actually shows the key press as you're typing it, and we don't want that. So what it's going to do after we sign in is it's going to remove all the restrictions that we have in place. So all that stuff that we're not allowing the students to do, we're going to circumvent that. So I got it here. I typed in my employee number and my current network password. I'm going to click login, and what will happen is it'll just take us to a page with some basic information about the iPad. The page itself doesn't matter. The idea is we just need to know whether we signed in. And now we know that we signed in because we got that success check mark. So once this is done loading, it's going to say, we'd like to send you notifications. Sure, allow. Okay, so I'm signed in, and I can tell that because the toggle button here says log out. So right now I'm signed into the AirWatch agent, and what's going to magically happen is when I press the home button to go back, look at that. The App Store is now available. The App Store has suddenly appeared. We can also go into settings, and more of the settings are now available. We can now basically do whatever it is that we want to this iPad. We can sign in with our iCloud account. We can change the wallpaper to something else. We can put that passcode on the device that we couldn't before. Basically, it's completely unrestricted. So the idea here is that students, we don't want them to tamper with it. And staff, we want to be able to do whatever it is they want. So any TDSB staff member can sign in with their employee number and password and log in. And as per your question, can the students log into the AirWatch Agent app? No, that would be a horrible idea. So no, only staff members can log into the AirWatch Agent app and have all the restrictions be removed. And it's any TDSB staff member, so it doesn't necessarily have to be like a teacher. So your caretaker, for example, could pick it up and use their employee number and password, and it would unlock the iPad to have all these features. So, and if let's say you forget to sign out and give this back to a student, I think after a certain amount of time, I'm not sure how many hours, 1, 5, 10, 4, 8? 8. After 8 hours, the AirWatch agent will automatically log out, and it will bring it back to a locked state. But just to be, more proactive, rather than waiting for 8 hours for it to sign out automatically, before we hand this back to a student, we can just force log out. So we just launch the agent app again, and as we saw here, there's a logout button. We're going to tap that. It's going to say, are you sure? I'm going to hit yes. And once it's back on that login screen, we'll know that it's logged out. And once it's logged out, everything should switch back. Okay, so now it's logged out. If I press the home button, there you go. Your App Store is gone again. And if I go back into settings, all those settings that I was able to modify before are now gone. So I can now confidently hand this back to a student and not worry that they will tamper with it. So again, that's the device side of things. Those are the two important parts I want you to know for now, is that AirWatch Agent app is the brains of the iPad. If you see the AirWatch Agent app, it is definitely enrolled in AirWatch, and you can sign into that AirWatch Agent to unlock all the restrictions. If at any point AirWatch is frustrating you and your AirWatch administrator at the school, which is actually you guys, but let's pretend that somebody who's not an AirWatch administrator was like, hey, I want this app on my iPad and I need it tomorrow. Right? And you as the AirWatch administrator are like, well, I can't quite do that by tomorrow. They could just sign into the AirWatch agent, unlock the App Store, go get that app they need, and download it and install it and get ready to use it. So completely leaving AirWatch out of the question. You can always go back to that comfortable state if you find that AirWatch is too much. So that's that. But obviously the benefits of AirWatch will outweigh that. You wouldn't want to sign in each iPad and start downloading apps that way. It's better to push it out from one central location. But that's the idea, is that you can have that kind of granular control over the iPad. That's all I wanted to cover on for that frontier. So I'm going to switch back to the presentation here. That was the agent and the catalog. Now we're going to actually talk about the actual web console, and this is where the magic happens with AirWatch. This is where you guys will log into the web console and group your iPads and apply apps to them from the web, and then hopefully all that stuff will push out to the iPads themselves. So how do we log into the AirWatch web console? Well, first and foremost, you can log in from anywhere on the web. You don't have to be within the TDSB. It's a cloud-based application. There is no browser limitation. You should be able to use Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Safari, what have you, whatever your preference is. It generally works pretty well in all the browsers. I have written here the username format, which I'm going to show you in just a second. And also it will prompt you to create a 4-digit PIN on login, which I'll explain in just a second as well. I've also put the link here. You'll see it's kind of long and cryptic, cn239.awmdm.com. No one's going to remember that. So let me show you how to access AirWatch the user-friendly way. So I'm going to exit out of my PowerPoint presentation here, or Google slide presentation rather, and I'm going to go to my desktop. And this is the desktop for all the TDSB computers. They should all look similar to this. In your case, in your school, you're going to have a shortcut for your school shared folder on the desktop. I don't have a school, so we have like a fictitious school called LAS Test School. And basically, if you go into that folder, you'll see usually you'll have a listing of, you know, your confidential school share folder, the drop-off folder, student share, school office share. But what we did is we dropped the AirWatch icon in there, or the AirWatch shortcut rather. So let me just expand this. So there it is. I can actually just double-click this if I don't want to remember the link, and it will take me here. So I hope that's clear. You guys should see that same icon on your desktop. So here it is. We're now at the AirWatch login screen. You want me to forward the slide deck? The slide deck isn't really important, actually. Let me just show you. So basically from here on, it's all hands-on. There's just these explanations of the console here, and then that's it. Like, it's a really short slide deck. I don't think there's any value in seeing this slide deck. It's only 17 slides, and it's just, you know, what you've seen so far.
I think it's available in the CSDKB.
Yeah. Oh, the slide deck?
No, not the slide deck, but all the information.
Oh yeah, all the information as far as what I'm going to cover is available on our knowledge base. So a lot of people don't know how to get to our knowledge base, but actually let me show you the user-friendly way. Everything that we do is all on Service IT, which also in your school shared folder there's a link. And Service IT is like our hub where you can log a ticket online, you can open up a web chat. But we also have our knowledge base published here. It's admittedly a little bit buried, and I wish it weren't. But if you click up here where it says Client Service Desk or Request a Service, on the right-hand side, oh no, oh right here, sorry, there it is, Knowledge Base. So that button right there will take you to our knowledge base that we provide for you guys. It should cover everything. In this case, it's not letting me do it because I'm signed in with a Gmail account. But if you sign in with a TDSB account, it should allow you to access it. Let me just sign in real quick. So yeah, if you actually look at the links that he's, I got Felipe here who's monitoring the chat. He's posting all this stuff in the chat, which will take you here. And this is our knowledge base, right? So everything that I'm going to cover today is actually under mobile devices and AirWatch, right? Our mobile device. Oh no, we kept it agnostic. So mobile device management. Everything that I'm covering today and more actually is all listed here. So if you want the slide deck, I'm going to say you don't need it, but I would definitely check this out. You can see there's a lot of information here, but yeah, this will be your more helpful resource than the slide deck. So where was I? Oh yes, we were logging into the AirWatch web console. So we saw the device side of things. Now we're going to talk about actual AirWatch web console. This is where we actually manage the devices. So let me just zoom in here, and I want to explain something because when we go to, oops, not that. When we go to sign in, we need to be cognizant of our username. So usually you would just type in, your employee number and password. In this case with AirWatch, it's required that you type in TDSB / and then your employee number. It's kind of weird, but that's how it works. So it's TDSB / and then your employee number. It doesn't have to be lowercase. Again, it's not case sensitive. You can do TDSB, you can do TDSB. It doesn't matter. As long as you have TDSB and then the /. And when I say /, I mean the one directly above the enter key, not the one to the left of the shift key, which would be considered the /. So we type in TDSB / and then our current employee number and password. So I'm going to type in my password now. As you can see, it's quite long, and I mess it up all the time. Okay. So I got my employee number and password in here, and once I'm ready, I'm going to click login. Again, TDSB / employee number, and then your password. I think I can zoom out now. That's clear. Boom. Okay. Click login, and you're not going to see this dashboard right away. If it's the first time you're logging in, you might not see this dashboard right away. What you're actually going to see is, let's go back to the slide deck, is the accept terms of agreement. There we go. So you might see the accept terms of agreement. Just click accept or OK to acknowledge that, and then it might actually prompt you to create a 4-digit PIN code. This 4-digit PIN code, don't worry too much about it. Set it to 1, 2, 3, 4 if you must. It's not really an important PIN code. The idea of the PIN code is that it's used to make sure that you don't do things accidentally. So for example, let's say I wanted to wipe a device from AirWatch, and you can do that. I can choose any of my iPads, and I can wipe it to its factory settings from the AirWatch web console. So I literally would click and go device wipe, and then the iPad would go back to its vanilla factory resetted state. Obviously, that's a very volatile thing to do if you have stuff on there that you don't want to lose. So this 4-digit, it'll actually make you type in the 4-digit PIN code before that action takes place. So if you were to try to wipe it, it would say type in the PIN code that you created. So that's like the one and only instance I'm pretty sure that we'll need it. So that's why I'm saying you can just set it to something simple like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just a fail-safe check to make sure that you want to do exactly what it is that you want to do. And of course, if you ever forget the PIN code, it's super easy to reset it. It's basically in the AirWatch web console. I won't show you right now. Again, it probably won't even matter that much, but basically it's like 2 clicks in settings in AirWatch, and you can create a new one. And then, of course, once you've gotten past that, you created your 4-digit PIN code, and you've accepted the terms of agreement, you should be on, where'd it go? Oh, did I close it? Yeah, I did. Okay, let me go back in here. See, I have remembered the link, cn239.awmd.com. Boom. So this is where you should see the dashboard. And the dashboard is basically just a high-level overview of your environment. It's got some nice, pretty graphs. So if you look on the left-hand side here, these are our main navigation buttons here. Devices will contain all the information about our devices. It'll show you like their make, model, version, what apps do they have installed. It's more like looking at the devices themselves. And then apps and books, as the name implies, will show you all the different apps that you have loaded in your environment and any books that you want to deploy to the iPads. And then the last one is groups in settings. With groups, that's where we can logically group our iPads. So just before I proceed here, I want to make it clear how this whole thing works. Is that first, we get your iPads into AirWatch, so that once they're in AirWatch, you see them in your list of devices. So I'm actually going to toggle over here from the dashboard. I don't need to spend any time here. It just shows me, that I have 5 devices and a bunch of little pretty graphs that you can click. Again, nothing really important here, but let's go over to devices and then list view. So what I'm going to see is a list of all my iPads. And what we want to do is we want to get all of our iPads in here so that they're in our AirWatch environment. And once our iPads are in AirWatch, that is that they have the blue background, they got the blue AirWatch agent on them, and I can see them here. Once they're in AirWatch, then we're going to group them. We put them into groups. So I could, for example, have all my library iPads in a group called library iPads. And then once they've been grouped, I can then apply apps to the groups. So that way I can make logical decisions of what apps I want on which iPads. The reason for this is that, let's say, generally speaking, with the larger schools, they want to do this kind of layout, and the reason is you don't necessarily want all the apps on your grade 1 iPads as you may want on your grade 8 robotics program iPads, right? They're not going to be the same suite of apps available to those students. So if you can logically group them, or if you guys have a system already set up at your school, maybe you have a cart of iPads and you call them, iPad cart number 1 and iPad cart number 2. You would basically group them by purpose. If you don't want to do that, I mean that's just the best way to do it, because that way you have certain apps for certain iPads and how they're going to be used. If you don't want to do that, you can alternatively just say, I want all my iPads to have all the apps that I want them to have, and that's totally fine too. It's a lot easier to manage to do it that way, but there are some caveats to it, such as, you know, you have apps that maybe that aren't targeted to that audience, as well as you could actually fill up the space on the iPad. So if you have like older iPads, for example, they only have like, let's say hypothetically 16 gigs of space, and your newer iPads might have 128 gigs. So you might end up filling up all your iPads, being like, oh yeah, my iPads are fine. But since you're doing all apps to all iPads, you know, the same ones on the newer iPads are also going on the older ones, and those older ones might fill up on space. So I hope that makes sense. But that's the idea. We put our iPads into AirWatch. Actually, I didn't mention this, but we should name them so that they make sense. Once they're named, then we group them, and then once they're grouped, we apply the apps to the group. Okay, so right now I'm looking at all my iPads that exist in AirWatch right now. These are all here because I enrolled them. I'm hoping you guys know how to enroll the iPads. If you don't, please let me know in the chat, because I don't want to cover that. And the reason for that is it takes a little bit of time. It's not overly difficult, but basically the enrollment is during the initial setup. So when you have a vanilla iPad like this one, for example, so this one's at like a factory reset setting. It's got like an initial setup menu. The enrollment is just following through this initial setup. It'll ask you to choose a wireless network, and then once you get to a certain part of this initial setup, it'll ask you to sign in with a username and password. And that username and password, if you put in your school's 4-digit Trillium number, that's how it gets enrolled. You know, I'm already this far. I might as well just explain. Okay, so I'm doing the initial setup. It says Toronto State School Board will automatically configure your iPad. I click Next, and here. So whenever you have a new iPad, so let's say I just got this brand new out of the box, or I have an existing iPad and I've wiped it, you always end up going through this initial setup. Your iPads should eventually get to a screen that asks you for your Trillium ID, which will be your school's 4-digit Trillium number, the same one that you see before your printer names. So in this case of my school, I have a fake one, and my Trillium ID is 9999. So I would type that in for the username, and I would also type that in for the password, 9999. So I got username and password in there. I tap Next, and what should happen is that this iPad should flutter its way over to AirWatch. So I'll see this iPad in my AirWatch web console. So that's really how you get an iPad in there. You either buy it brand new and type in your school Trillium number during the setup, or you take an iPad that you already have, wipe it, and put in that Trillium number during that step. Can more than one teacher or administrator log into the AirWatch console at the same time? Yes. So you're all logging in with your employee number and password. In fact, this is used all across the TDSB. There's about 30,000 iPads that are enrolled, and I imagine one person, at least from each school, is signing into this AirWatch console at a given time. So it's a popular application. Definitely more than one person can sign in per school, per time. It's based on your account. In fact, I think you can sign in at multiple locations. So you can sign in with your same account at like another computer, for example. So getting back to here, so now I showed you briefly, because I just didn't want to spend too much time on how to get the device into AirWatch. If I refresh it, I should see my brand new iPad appear here. So it's one of these. I actually know which one it is. It's this one up here at the top, because of the version it's running. It's running Apple iOS 10.33, and I know for a fact the one that I'm looking at has that. Which brings me to an important part about AirWatch is look at these names. Their names are really long and cryptic. So we actually want to rename our iPads. And the reason we want to rename our iPads is that when it comes time to put them into groups, you know, it's going to make sense. Because right now, AirWatch doesn't know that the iPad that you have in your hand is being used for grade 1. So the way we have to tell AirWatch how we're going to be grouping our iPads. And we usually start off with the name. So you can see these ones are a good example. Robotics iPad number 3, library iPad number 1. So I've named them by their purpose. And then I put a number 1 to simulate the scenario where maybe you would have a label on it. So what I would recommend is if you guys have a bunch of iPads, you label them with masking tape on the back or a sticker that would say, you know, iPad 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've seen schools do it by color. They call them red iPad 1, red iPad 2, and they'll name it after the bumpers that they put on the iPad. The idea is you want to have a naming convention at your school, or at least some sort of system where they're physically labeled. So that way you can map what you see in AirWatch to the real physical world. So in this case I have 2 that are not named, and I need to rename them. Now, admittedly, this is a bit of a pain, but once you do this, it will make your life 100 times easier going forward. It'll make your AirWatch setup a lot more versatile in that you could group them based on their purpose, like I mentioned. And yeah, it's just much better for being able to managing and being able to see what it is that you have. Before, I guess I'll say recently, what you used to be able to do is you could go on the iPads themselves and you could name it from the iPad side. So let's say I have this iPad and I wanted to name it. Yeah, I know, I'm saying what we can't do. So before, you used to be able to go into settings, general, and about, and then you could change the name here. And then whatever name you set there would show up in here. That is no longer the case. I think on more recent versions of iOS, something must have broke, or maybe the AirWatch agent broke it. I'm not too sure. But we got a word from AirWatch that is no longer possible. So that makes our lives a little bit more difficult because if I want to rename this iPad, for example, how do I know that this iPad is this one in the web console? Really, the only way to do that is to filter by serial number. So this is where it becomes a bit of a pain. If you have an iPad, you can go to Settings, General, About, and under About, it'll show you the serial number right there. Or also, like I said at the beginning, the serial number is also at the lock screen at the bottom. It's obviously too blurry to see there, but I can't really focus on this document camera. But the serial number is under Settings, General, About too. What I can do is I can take that serial number and I can plug it into my list of devices. So under here as my list of devices, if I use this search box in the top right hand corner, I can type in that serial number. So GCHVJEQ 4HLF9. So that's the serial number of the iPad that I have next to me. Let me just switch back. So this iPad, I'm searching that serial number up here. And when I hit enter, it's going to filter the list of my devices down to that particular iPad. I must have typed it in wrong. Oh, I see what I did. I put in a $sign instead of a 4. There we go. So it takes my list and it filters it down to that particular iPad. So now I have this one particular iPad here. I'm going to click the pencil. Actually, let me just pause here because I'm seeing some chatter going on. What could be the reason for this? Does the administrator need to add me as an AirWatch administrator? Felipe, I guess. Yeah. So I'm going to let Felipe handle this. If you're having troubles logging in, I'm pretty sure you should have access. Just remember how you sign in is TDSB /. So, for example, if your employee number is 1234, you would type in TDSB /1234. That makes sense. 56 as your username, like that. TDSB /123456, or you can do TDSB /123456. Right. So as long as you have that / like that, not the / this one, that /. So if you have that correctly typed in and you're typing your current network password, then you should be doing it. You should be able to log in. If not, then that means you have not been either added in by your AirWatch administrator, which would be your principal, which I'm pretty sure we try to make sure that everyone did, or maybe that 12 to 24 hour sync didn't take place. I don't know. I would try again. That's what I would do.
She doesn't have access.
No? She's not in the in group? Okay. Yeah, you don't have access. So even hypothetically, now, if we were to add you in, it would still take 12 to 24 hours from now to get you added in. So what I would do is just, you can watch along, or you can come back and watch this video again when you have access. But we send an email to every principal before you get invited to this saying that, please add them in. Not sure why that happened. I apologize. At any rate, diving back here, so I showed you that we can now match this iPad to how it is in the web console by using the serial number search in the top right hand corner. Once I filtered it down to that iPad, I click this little pencil icon. And the friendly name, you'll want to change it to something like, as you saw before, I had robotics and library. I'm going to call this one grade 2 iPad number 8, whatever, right? And then I'm going to use this checkbox here to set the friendly name as the device name. which what it'll do is it'll take this name and it will put it in the actual device name under settings, general, and about. So under settings, general, and about, this name up here, that long cryptic one, is going to change to what I set in here. So I'm going to click save. So that iPad should now be called grade 2 iPad number 8. And if I toggle back over to my device, oops, how do I do that? There we go. So it still shows the old name. Let's see if, there you go, now it's refreshed. About grade 2 iPad number 8. So that made its way over. And yes, we'll add you in through after the webinar. We'll try to get in touch with your principal. So I've renamed the iPad, and if I close out of this, I can cancel out the search list, and now I can see I have all my iPads named, except for this one. I'll just rename this one too. So for the sake of example, I can click that pencil, and now I can call it grade 4 iPad number 7, whatever. Right? Set the friendly name as a device name, save. So now all my iPads have a name that makes sense to me. I know when I look at this list that grade 4 iPad number 7 is most definitely this one, because this one has a number on the back that says grade 4 iPad 7. Obviously it doesn't really say that, but you can see that we here at the client service desk also label our iPads with a sticker so that we can uniquely match it up with what we see in the AirWatch web console. And so again, that is a little bit annoying because you have to figure out which iPad is which, and the way that you do that is you can filter using the serial number, or what some people do is that they add their devices in one at a time. So that way every iPad that comes in that has a weird name or a long cryptic name, or the iPad's name just says iPad, you'll know that it's the one that you just enrolled because you're doing them one at a time. So that's the other option. Fortunately, it was a lot easier to do it the old-fashioned way, where you go settings, general, and about, change the name on the iPad, and then the iPad name would propagate its way over to AirWatch. Unfortunately, that is no longer the case. So this is the devices list view. I'm going to show you again over here. So we're looking at our devices under list view, and we can see all of our iPads here. We can shift our focus from the list view over to the details view, and basically I can click any one of these iPads, and what it'll do is, rather than just showing me a list of all my iPads, it'll show me like all the details of that one specific iPad. So if I click grade 2 iPad number 2, now I'm shifting my focus from all the iPads to just this one. And then here's just a bunch of different little details about this iPad. You know, the iPad model, how much space is on there, 32 gigabytes, the name that I gave it, what version of iOS it's running, 11.3. On the right hand side here, if we scroll down, the serial numbers there, the power status, 93% battery, storage capacity, blah, blah, blah. Everything you need to know about that iPad is under the summary tab in details view. So you can click the iPads themselves and it'll take you into this page where you can see individual details about it. There are actually some more actions up here too. I did mention that in the top right hand corner, under more actions here, that you could wipe the device to its factory settings. So for example, if I wanted to wipe this device back to its default, I could do that from here. And when you do that, like I said, it'll ask you for that 4-digit PIN code just to make sure that that's what you want to do. And you know, if I'm not going to do it, so I just wanted to show you, but that PIN code is just to make sure that that's what you want to do. So you can wipe the device. There's different things here. I don't want to spend too much time because the wording's pretty clear based on what you see. If there's an update available for the device, you can do iOS update. If you want to restart the device, like reboot it, you can do it from here. If for whatever reason somehow there's a student managed to put a passcode on the device, like you could clear it from here as well too. Yeah, so that's the More Actions tab. Definitely take a peek over there. Summary, it just shows you all the details about the iPad. And then we can toggle over to apps themselves. And this what it'll show you is this will show you all the apps that are deployed to this iPad. So not necessarily that the iPad has it, but that we have chosen to deploy it to this iPad. So for example, I can see here that the AirWatch agent, that's the brains, Google Chrome, Classroom. The ones with the green check mark are telling me that that iPad indeed has it. And of course, I can match it up with what I see here. If I look at my iPad, it definitely has Google Chrome, which is right here. It has Classroom, which is right here. And it has Docs. But you can see that in the red X, there's an app, Epic. that was supposed to be on here, and if I look at my iPad, it does not have Epic. So it has a real-time inventory of what the iPad has and doesn't have, or at least it tries. There are instances where, let's say I deployed an app 2 minutes ago, you'll see something like this, where it's like a pause. It'll say not installed, but supposed to be installed. Or it'll say app ready for the iPad. So the reason that Google Translate is gray, and so is one other one, is Starfall Twitter, is because I set these apps to be not mandatory. I mean, I didn't force the apps to appear on the iPad. I actually made them on demand, which means I'm giving the person who has the iPad in their hand the option to add those apps if they wish, using the catalog feature, which I will go into more detail later. But the idea here is that under the apps tab, you can see what apps are installed on the iPad based on the green check mark. If you see a gray check mark, it means the app is supposed to be installed, but AirWatch has not confirmed it yet. And then, of course, red means that it is not installed, either because the app failed to push or because you removed it. So I can actually, for example, if I want to remove Google Keep, I can from here actually just select Google Keep and do remove, right? So that green check mark should change to in this case, it looks like they changed the icons. A black, okay, black because it's pending removal, which means it hasn't confirmed that it's been removed yet. And then, but once it's removed, what did I remove? Google Keep? Actually, it's already gone. So Google Keep is already gone from here. And what'll happen is, if I refresh, that'll probably show red. Yeah, so now it's red. And you can see here the status shows MDM removed. So I forced it to be removed. So, the idea is I can, pluck the app off there one by one if I just wanted to do that for one individual iPad. That's not an efficient way to mass remove the app. So let's say you've deployed an app and then suddenly you have no longer a need for it, but yet it's spread out across your school. There's another way of doing that, and it's basically unrolling the changes that you've done to apply it in the first place. So you can see that this app Google Keep is still supposed to be installed because I have the app assigned to it. I can reinstall it by using the install button there. So that's not really how you install the app, but I just wanted to show you that if you go if you're under list view and you're looking at your iPads and you click an iPad name, you can go to the apps tab and you can see all the apps that are supposed to be on there, the apps that are on there, and the apps that have been removed from there or have failed to be on there. So it gives you an individual look at that iPad. That's all I'm going to cover for now as far as the devices section goes. So when I say devices section, I'm referring to this button over here on the left-hand side. I'm actually going to jump past apps and books and go straight to groups, and then we're going to go back to apps. Because, again, we have our devices. They're all named appropriately now. We got them named based on their purpose and the labeling convention that I have at my school. Now I want to group them so that, let's say, if I want to apply an app to the grade 2 iPads, I can do that. So I'm going to go to Groups and Settings. I'm going to click Groups and Assignment Groups. And under here, I've already got some prefab groups that I've created. In this case, I'm running out of examples because I keep creating all the groups. Robotics. Okay, what will I do? Let's say, okay, so I'm gonna create a new smart group. I'm gonna click this button here, Add a Smart Group. So I've already have these groups, but I want to make a new one. Actually, you know what? What did I call this iPad? Settings? This is grade 2 iPad. Okay, so I'm going to remove my grade 2 group, if it'll let me, because I'm going to make a grade 2 group. I can't because it has assignments. Gosh darn it. Okay, I'm just going to add a new group here, Add Smart Group. And what we're going to do is once we're on this page, we're going to toggle from, I guess I'll start at the top. So it shows you the, wow. That's a loud chair. At the top here, we're going to create a name. I already created a grade 2 group, so I'm going to call this grade 2 2.0. Yeah, sure, why not? So this is my grade 2 2.0 group, grade 2 2. So this is the name of my group. Stop that. The guy next to me has got the world's loudest, squeakiest chair. So grade 2 2.0 is the name of the group that I'm going to create. But if I scroll down to this next section, it'll say, what kind of group are you going to create? There's select criteria and select devices or users. We are not going to use select criteria, which is where it sits by default. With select criteria, what that does, essentially, is it basically makes groups based on conditions. So, what version of iOS is it running? What kind of device is it? Is it a newer one or is it an older one? You may find value in that, but for the most part, people don't use it. I'm not going to show it because most people do not use that. But definitely the second you come in here to create a new group, if you're manually creating a group, you'll want to switch over to select devices or users. That's step 1. So if you're ever here, don't go to select criteria, select devices or users. When you click that, it's going to say, hey, you're going to lose your changes, which is fine because we haven't done anything. Click OK, and now this is where we want to be. So now we got a new group, we've given it a name, we changed it to select devices or users. Now we're going to start picking our iPads from the list. So we're going to put our cursor in this field right here, and what it'll do is it'll bring a drop-down menu of all my iPads. So these are the ones that I had earlier. And you may have noticed now that, this would be a time where, your naming convention plays helpful in managing your iPads. So for example, if I was here and I hadn't renamed my iPads, and I'm creating a group for grade 2s, and all my iPads are just called iPad, well, I wouldn't know which one's which and which one belongs in this group. So, since I renamed my iPads, I can now look at this list and go, grade 2 iPad number 8, that obviously belongs in grade 2 group. And then same thing, I'm going to do it again in grade 2 iPad number 5. I'm going to choose it from the drop-down menu, and then I'm going to click add, and it's going to make it appear here. And I just do this over and over again until I finally have my group the way I like it. If I accidentally choose one, the library iPad, whoops, and I accidentally click add, whoops, it's in my group, and I made a mistake and I want to get rid of that iPad out of the group. To undo it, we just uncheck this little checkbox here, and it's gone. So now I got 2 iPads in the grade 2 group. They're grade 2 iPads, and if I like this group, I'm ready to hit save. Click save, boom. And let's say tomorrow I get 4 new grade 2 iPads. And I need to come back. Oh darn, I don't need to create a new group. I don't need to, what I can do is I can edit my existing group. So I can come into grade 2 2.0 and I can click this pencil here. And it'll bring me right back to this screen. So now I can go and add those new iPads that I just got in yesterday. Obviously I don't have them, but you could keep adding them in. Or you can come back and remove them. So let's say your grade 2 iPads have now been shifted to a new purpose. They're now the robotics iPads. You can take them out of this group by unchecking. So you can go back and edit your groups. That's the point I'm trying to convey. Save it, boom. So right now we haven't really done, we haven't pushed any apps yet, but we had our iPads named and we now have them in a group. So we have our grade 2 iPads and we put them in a grade 2 group. Now we're ready to make those apps appear for all of our grade 2 iPads. So we spent our time in devices, we shifted over to groups and settings. Now we're going to go to apps and books. Under apps and books, the first thing you see when you click here is it takes you to this native page. This native page, you're going to immediately see this list of unknown apps, and it's going to be very cryptic, and you're going to wonder why this is all here. You might see some app names, but what you want to do when you first get to the apps and books section is in this search list field in the top right hand corner, you're going to want to type in your school's 4-digit trillium number. So again, like we showed during the enrollment section, it's 4 digits for your school. They'll appear as they are before the printer names at your school. So for example, if you have a classroom printer, it'll probably be like 1, 2, 3, 4, class 055, for example. The 1, 2, 3, 4 at the beginning of the printer name is your school's trillium number. Obviously, it's not 1, 2, 3, 4 for you, but that school trillium number is unique to your school. And that's how we sort of digitally refer to your school. For me, my little fake school that I got here called Maple Grove Community School, my 4-digit trillium number is 4 nines, 9999. So I put that up here in the top right-hand corner. So what that's going to do, it's going to take this list of apps that don't mean anything to me. In fact, I actually can't use 99.9% of these. This is like a board-wide look of all the apps. So someone else may have requested these apps, but they're not for me. So to see which apps I can use, I filter it down by 9999, and I hit enter. And what it's going to do is it's going to now show me all the apps that I can use. So these are all the apps that I have here in AirWatch. And I can actually interact with these apps. I can deploy these apps to my iPads. And how I do that is by clicking the app name. Now, if I go back and I show you, like, for example, if I take out the 9999, what we'll see is, let's say I wanted Angry. Let's say I accidentally started searching by the app name. And I'm looking for Angry Birds. No, that's a bad example. Epic? Okay. So it's like, hey, I want Epic. And I search for Epic. But this is mine. I want one that I don't have. That's a bad example. Prolo. I'll just do Prolo. There it is. So Prolo Quota Go. This is a really expensive app. And you'll see that I searched Prolo, and an app came up, but I can't click the name. I actually can't do anything with this app. It's because it's not mine. I didn't request it. So that's why you don't want to search for the app name. You want to search for either your school's 4-digit trillion number, 9999, or you search for you can actually type out the name of your school as long as you spell it correctly. Like I can do Maple Grove and hit enter, and then it'll show me all my apps. And then, of course, now that I've searched my apps, I can actually click them. You can see how the mouse changes now, and I can click them. So this is how we're going to add the apps. Okay, so that's how to filter it. Now, before I go on, it's like, why is it only these apps, right? Don't I have access to the entire App Store? Unfortunately not. So in order to get apps to appear in AirWatch, when I do that, nothing shows. Perfect. Perfect in that that's exactly what I'm going to cover right now. Not perfect in that you have no apps in your AirWatch environment. So, Antoinetta, how these apps get here is through the app request form. So by default, you're not going to have any apps in your AirWatch environment unless you submit the app request form. That's one of the things on top of getting you added into AirWatch that we send to the principal is to have you guys curate a list of all the apps that you guys can think of that you'll want, and then we load it into your AirWatch environment. So what we do is the app request form can be found in our knowledge base here. Let me toggle up. So if I go back here, there is a article here on the app request form. Right here at the top, app request form. And this actual article explains how to submit the app request form. And let me actually open up the form itself. And I'm going to also open up this link here. So, in a nutshell, how this works is we're going to fill out this form. And this is how we tell Teaching and Learning with Technology and our application admin department what apps we want in our environment. If the app is paid, it gets vetted by Teaching and Learning with Technology. That's because we don't want to spend board funds on apps that are not appropriate. So if it's a paid app, it takes a little bit longer because it has to go through Teaching and Learning with Technology. It could take upwards of 15 business days. If the app is free, just to streamline the process, and since it's free and we're not spending any board money, there's no vetting process. They just add it into your AirWatch environment within 1 to 2 days. It doesn't take very long at all. In fact, they can create a ticket for it. But basically this form, so let's say I want an app. I'll actually walk this. So I'm going to scroll down here. It's going to ask me my name. I am Brandon Silva. My employee number. Okay. And I'm going to scroll down here. And my role, I am a teacher. Not really. I can then fill in my email address. I think you get the idea here. .ca. And then this is one important part of the form. It says select your school type. Are we school or central location? We're school. We choose our school from this drop-down menu. It's obviously got everything, so it's quite large. I'm just going to pick one at random. Course select, whatever. So that's my school. And now the app type. So now it's going to ask me what kind of app am I looking for. Is this going to be paid, free, or am I going to request both? If I do paid or both, it'll ask me for 2 new fields. One is the principal or manager's name, and then the cost center, and then the GL account. So this is all the information that they're going to use to bill the app to your school. And then, of course, if it's a paid app or both, I'm gonna need this information because it's going to be vetted by Teaching and Learning, and they're going to have to pluck it out of your budget. But most people choose free. And if I choose free, I don't have to fill in that information, and I can just go from here. It's going to ask to use AirWatch. Yes, we use AirWatch. And now I'm going to scroll down here. And this is where I add my apps in. Now, this is a little bit of pain, and this is why I recommend that you have your staff curate a giant list of the apps that they want to see on the iPad, because you're going to have to fill out this form, and rather than filling it out multiple times, which you can do, you can fill this out multiple times, or you can submit one big whack ton of apps in one request. So I can basically say I want Angry Birds, right? The problem with this, and the reason there's this second field here that says VPP app URL, is that if I want to request Angry Birds, it's not good enough. And what I mean by good enough is that the people who are going to add this app into your environment are going to come into the App Store. They're going to go, okay, she wants Angry Birds. They're going to come in here, and then they're going to go, oh, look at that. There's 100 different apps called Angry Birds, right? So what they request is that you use, can we use gift cards enrolled onto our accounts? Can they? No? I don't think so. No, I don't believe you can use gift cards with the VPP program.
You can.
No.
If you use a gift card, then it'll be locked to that Apple ID. It won't be able to be transferred into AirWatch.
Right. Okay, so yeah, the way that you purchase with a gift card is a little bit different. It doesn't fall into the volume purchase program, so it's almost like a consumer way of purchasing it. And then basically, if you were to use a gift card, it would lock that app to the Apple ID that you purchased it with, which the way that volume purchasing program works isn't really associated with the Apple ID. It's more like our organization. So no, but I think we generally get some discount, I believe, because we end up buying in bulk. So for example, part of that vetting process, I think, is that teaching and learning, like it'll say, like, if you want, let's say there's an app that's free, or sorry, paid, and it's $1 for 10 licenses, but if you get 10 or more licenses, it's 50 cents. If you are requesting it and someone else is requesting it, they will obviously just, get 20 just to get the discount. So there is some, some workaround there. But getting back to this, so the reason we have the article that explains to how to submit this app request form is so that we can explain this part here, really, is this VPP app URL. Again, using my example of Angry Birds, if I just put Angry Birds and then I start saying another app, whatever, and I submitted the form like this, they wouldn't know which Angry Birds you wanted. So what they request that you do is you go here to this page, which is in the article. So this is the volume purchase program. It's like an app store, basically. You go to the volume purchase program store, and this is all in the instructions, by the way. So it even has the link there. So you go to the volume purchase program store. You search the app that you want. In this case, I searched Angry Birds, and it turns out that I actually want Angry Birds Go. Right? So they ask that you click the app name, get the app URL at the top. So I put my mouse in the URL field up here, and then I copy this, go back to my form, and I paste this in here. So now there's no question about the app that I want. I can write Angry Birds here, but when they see it, they're going to see Angry Birds 2. I totally understand if you have to go to class and teach. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you can come back and watch the remaining 10 minutes that I'm going to show about adding the apps. But so this is the process to add the app into AirWatch. We click submit, and then basically a ticket gets created, and then they will put that app in your AirWatch environment. Once that app has been approved, it will then show up in your AirWatch environment, which is over here. And then I go to apps and books. Again, I search Maple Grove at the top here, or 9999 for my school trillion number. And once that app request form has been processed, and you'll know because you'll get an email, you should then see the app listed here. If you don't see the app listed here, let's say you just got a notification via email saying your app is ready to go. You come in here and you're like, hey, I don't see it. Press this Sync Assets button here. This Sync Assets button will force AirWatch to go look for any apps that have been recently added. Once I press the Sync Assets button, it'll show me a list of apps that I can add in. So now that I have all my apps added here from the app request form, I can now deploy it. And how I deploy it is I find the app that I want. In this case, let's say I deploy, which one don't I have? I don't have Gmail on here. Okay, so let's say I want to deploy Gmail. How I deploy Gmail to, let's say, my grade 2 iPads. Actually, that's a bad example. You don't have Gmail grade 2. Let's do explain everything, I think. Let me just check this out. Sorry, I'm just jumping a few steps here. I just want to see if I've previously done. No, I haven't. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's say I want to deploy explain everything to my grade 2 iPads. How I do that is I click the app name. It'll bring me here. Once I'm here, I click save and assign. There's nothing to do here. Don't stay on the screen. Sometimes people accidentally put in a number here, which puts the license on hold, which we don't want to do. But what we're going to do is we're going to go save and assign. And here's where we're going to create the assignment rule. And the assignment rule basically says this app needs to go to this group now or later, right? So I'm going to click add assignment. And I'm going to hover my mouse over or I'm going to click add assignment by, or click add assignment rather. Oh, this is new. You just click add assignment, and then this little box will come up here. So let me just close out of that so you can see that again. Okay, so there's nothing here. I can go to add assignment, and it creates this little box here. And now if I put my cursor in this field, it's going to give me a drop-down menu where I can then choose a smart group. In this case, we created grade 2 2.0, and this is the group that we want to push this app to. And here it shows that there are 2 devices in this group. We need to give this group a certain allocated amount of licenses. So even though the app is free, we still have these licenses for the app. So for example, even though Explain Everything is a free app, the total licenses, as you can see on the right-hand side, shows that there's 500 licenses. So we have 500 free licenses to use of Explain Everything. The idea is that we choose 500 because it's a lot and we don't see you guys exceeding 500 licenses. If you do exceed the licenses, you can just let us know and then we will bump the license count up for you. In this case, I have my grade 2 2.0 group. It has 2 devices in it. I need to give this group, out of my 500 licenses, at least 2 or more. Because every iPad must have 1 license for that app, even though it's free. So I have to give it 2 or more. What I recommend is you always choose more. So even though I have 2 iPads in here now, who's to say that down the road I don't get 4 more iPads that require a license for that? So what I'll do is I'll take that allocated value, and instead of entering 2, I'll actually increase that to something like 20. So I've kind of shot for the moon. And the idea is that I don't have to come back here and make those changes later should it be needed. So once that is, once I've done the 20 licenses here, I will then expand this deployment section here. Oh, sorry, you can't expand. You scroll down. So I know that my grade 2 2.0 iPads are going to have 20 licenses. I scroll down, and it's going to ask me the assignment type. By default, it's set to auto. We're going to leave it as auto, but what you could do is on demand, which I'll explain in just a second. But we're going to leave it as auto, which means we're going to push this app to the iPad right away as soon as possible. So what I should see when I hit save here is that this app will push to my iPads in the grade 2 group. So I have this grade 2 2.0 group. I click save and publish. It's going to say, hey, just so you know, these are the iPads that are going to get it. That's fine. Perfect. I click publish. Boom. It looks like something's happened. And what I can do now is I can actually toggle back to my iPad, and sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's not, unfortunately. So one of the things I should mention is that with this AirWatch environment, everything is all based on the network. Right now, it doesn't have the app, but it will eventually make its way over. That's based on the Wi-Fi, the connection, a whole bunch of other variables. But eventually what will happen is this iPad should get that app, and another iPad in the grade 2 group will also get it as well. In this case, I only have this one with me, and the other one's downstairs. So I'm going to toggle back here. So what I've done is I've deployed that app, and I made it automatic. So I'm saying automatically push that app out to those iPads. The other option is that you could make it on demand. So let's say I actually already have one app set to on demand. So let's say I'm going to go to Twitter. If I click Twitter, I can go to, again, we go to save and assign. I can see that I've previously created an assignment rule here. So this is one that I've done before. I can check that and go to edit, and it's going to show me this app is going to all my iPads. So I've created an assignment here that all my iPads are going to get Twitter. There's 6 iPads in total in my all group, and I've given it 400 licenses to accommodate for growth. However, if I scroll down, before we had it set to auto, which forces it to be deployed. This one's set to on demand. And what does that mean by on demand? I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar about the catalog, and that's where the catalog comes into play. Oh, by the way, there it is, right here. Explain Everything eventually made its way over to the iPad. So that was forced on its way there. But what you don't see is Twitter, because it's set to on demand. So I'm going to save this out. I'm going to click cancel. I'm not going to make any changes because I already have everything set up. I already have it so that Twitter is going to go to all my iPads on demand. And the key part is that on demand. If I go back to my iPad, I don't see Twitter here. It's set to on demand. Where it is, it's actually buried in this catalog. So that's the other AirWatch component. If I go to the catalog, what the catalog is going to show me is it's going to show me all the apps I currently have installed on the iPad because they're forced there. And apps that are optional. So in the case of Twitter, there it is, right? It's showing the button there as install, whereas, you know, Google Drive directly below it is green and says installed. So Google Drive was forced on here. Twitter was not. Twitter was set to on demand. So if I want Twitter, I can tap the install button. It's going to ask me, do you want to install? I hit sure. Install, it'll say processing. And if I press the home button, nothing happens. Let's try that again. Catalog. Okay, install. Install. It says it's installing. Let me press the home button. Oh, there you go. It's always two times. Always got to do it twice. I don't understand why. Every time I do a webinar, I always got to do it. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. So that's on demand. I basically, I can install Twitter, but I made it optional. So if I go to the catalog, you can see now that it'll show that all my apps that are green are installed, and then the ones that are optional have an install button. And that is all because I made that setting in here for on demand. So if I go back to Twitter, there it is, and I click the name, I go to save and assign, and then I look at that, click that, edit, and again, iPads all, right? But on demand. If I chose auto, it would force it to the iPad as opposed to making it optional. So that's how you deploy an app. Those are the two methods. There's automatic, which pushes it right away. Then there's on demand, which gives you the option to do it from the catalog. So you're giving the user the control to get it. Now the last thing I just want to cover is how to remove the app. So I just pushed out explain everything to my iPad. And let me just show you that once again. Over here is the explain everything app. Now you can imagine, in this case I have the explain everything only on my grade 2 iPads, which there's only 2 of them. But in the real world, let's say you have 100 iPads across your school and you deployed explain everything to all your iPads, all 100 of them, let's say. And now you want to remove the app, you no longer have a need for it. You don't want to go up to each one and remove it. That would take forever. You can actually just reverse what you did earlier. So in the case of explain everything, if I click explain everything, and same thing, I go to save and assign. But when I get here, this is the assignment rule that I created that says let's do everything on grade 2. And just to show you again, I can come in here and edit it. So 2 of my iPads, and the deployment type was set to auto, not on demand. I'm going to cancel out of here. So if I want to remove what I just did, I'm not sure why this doesn't fit very nicely on the screen, because I can't scroll down. Let me zoom out. Sorry, they made a recent cosmetic update to AirWatch, and it's a little bit funny. But here it is. There's the assignment rule that I created for grade 2. I can select it and do delete. So think of it this way. If I assign an app, I'm pushing it to all my iPads. If I want to undo that, I remove the assignment. So if I delete this assignment rule, so I sure want to continue, sure save. And just like before, when it showed, when I go to save and publish, it showed me all the iPads that were going to get it. This one's going to show me all the ones that are going to remove it. In this case, both my grade 2 iPads. So I get a one last chance, and I can go to publish. And what that does is it's going to go ahead and undo everything I did. So if I go back to my iPad here and I switch over, it's gone. So you can imagine if that was on 100 iPads, that would be a lot easier. You can remove the app from all 100 iPads simply just by undoing the adding part. So you add an app by creating assignment, choosing the group you want to assign it to. You know, if you got your grade 2 iPads group, you choose that. If you want to assign it to all your iPads, use the iPads all group. You choose the license count. The license count should be greater than the amount of devices that are in the group. And then you click save and publish, and it pushes the app out to all your iPads. And then if you want to remove it, you just undo that process. Go back into the app, find your assignment rule, delete it, boom. That's pretty much it. I've already overstayed my welcome here by about 15 minutes. I'd say that that is the bulk of what you need to know. Again, always come back to our knowledge base here. It'll cover everything that I've mentioned and significantly more. I'm just going to go ahead and pass the floor to you guys, if anyone even is still there, for questions. So if you have any questions, please type them in the chat now, and I'll take that extra time to walk you through that more specific question over a live interaction. So go ahead and mull that over for the next few minutes. If I don't see anything in the chat room in 3 or 4 minutes, then I'll just assume that nobody's here, and I'll go ahead and close up the chat. So go ahead and type your questions if you got any. All right, well, I don't think there's anyone here, is there?
There's 3, but
Oh, there's 3. It's lovely. All right, I'm going to assume that there's no questions because I don't see anything in the chat. Of course, if you have any questions, first and foremost, come check the knowledge base here. Again, it's serviceit.tdsb.on.ca. If you go there, you can get access to this knowledge base, which covers everything about AirWatch and more. You'll see on the left-hand side everything technology related. This is like our public knowledge base for you guys, where we create articles to help you guys out. So definitely take a peek around here for AirWatch stuff and more. And if you have any questions that you can't find in the knowledge base, or you still don't quite understand something, please feel free to give us a call. Our number is 395. I want to stay on the phone. You can open up web again. Please feel free to contact us. And if you're still watching, please enjoy the rest of your day and have a good weekend. Take care and bye-bye.